Hey, this is Pure, and today I'm going to do a review of the Presonus Studio 24C audio interface. So I've got it connected right now, and I'll walk you through the main features. It has two audio inputs. Currently, what I have connected on line 1 is a dynamic microphone, so you'll hear this one. I'm moving closer to the left microphone. It is a Behringer XM8500 dynamic microphone connected to a mixer, and then the mixer output is connected to line number 1, okay, the input number 1. The mixer has a line level output signal, so the first one is line level, okay. On the input number 2, what I have is a condenser microphone. In this case, this is the Audio Technica AT2020, and I've connected it directly via an XLR cable to input number 2. And for this audio interface, there is no button that you need to press to kind of let the audio interface know what kind of signal you're feeding into it. It is automatically kind of detecting what signal you have plugged in, and it will handle it automatically. Now here, moving to the center of the audio interface, we do have a level meter, which is quite useful, although not as detailed in terms of the gradient. You at least can see there that whether you are at -12, which is where you would want to be at your kind of ordinary signal, and then from time to time you would see yourself hitting -6 dB, and that would be your peaks, and you can at least see that you are staying away from 0 so that you are not clipping. This knob here that I'm pointing to will control the gain for signal number 1, input number 1. I currently have it at around 4 o'clock. And then right below it, you've got the knob for signal number 2, the gain knob for input number 2, which I currently also have roughly at the same point, something like 4 o'clock. Then we have here this big button, which is for phantom power, and you have to enable that whenever you're using a condenser microphone, because it needs phantom power to operate. Below it, we've got a mixer, which will control what you're hearing when you are monitoring the what's going into the audio interface. So all over way to the left, you would be hearing only the inputs in your two lines there, and all over to the right, you would then only be able to hear what's playing on your computer. So it only controls what you're hearing as you are monitoring your signal, but it has no impact in terms of what is actually being recorded. This knob is your main output. So if you've got your audio interface connected to, say, monitor speakers, then that would control the signal for that one, the volume. I've got it turned all the way to the left because right now I'm not outputting anything to my speakers. Then this button here, this knob, controls the volume of your headphones that you use for monitoring the signals. And as you can see here, I've got it turned all the way to maximum, because that's the only way for me to get kind of the volume I want when I'm using this HD 598 Sennheiser headphones, which has an impedance of 50 ohms. Maybe if you use like lower impedance headphones, then you won't need to go to the maximum level. But just take note of that. If you're using higher impedance, like 80 ohms to 100 or even 600, it will be quite hard to drive, and you won't have a big enough a volume. One thing you'll notice is that my headphone jack is plugged in not at the front. You can't see it here. It's actually plugged in at the back of the unit, and that's how it was designed. Uh, for some, that's kind of a um, quirk, because for many of the interfaces, like what you have for Focusrite, you would have your input jack at the front. But in this case, the headphone jack for monitoring is at the back. So that's a quick rundown of all the kind of the main features as kind of laid out in terms of the control panel at the front. But there are a few things which makes this audio interface better than some of the others in this price range. One is that it has a loopback feature, which I'll try to demo later on, which allows you to record separately as its own track what's being played on your computer. The other thing is that it does have additional connectivity, which I don't use. If you go to the back, it has MIDI input and output, which I don't have a MIDI device, so I won't be able to demo that. But just to let you know that that's also a feature which is not available in other audio interfaces. Now, the other thing is kind of a plus when you buy this device is that you would get for free what I'm showing here in the background, the Studio One artist version of this digital audio workstation, right? It's a DAW software, and it comes with your purchase of the audio interface. So this is a step up compared to kind of the free version that might be out there, like the light and free versions, say of Pro Tools or Ableton. Now this is the Studio One artist version, which has a lot more features and functionalities. Now that's a rundown of all the features, but I do want to kind of highlight a few things that is a bit quirky when I was fully going through all the features. One thing which is a bit annoying is that you are not able to direct monitor in stereo. Unlike, say, the Focusrite 2i2, which has a button here for selecting whether you're monitoring in mono or in stereo, in the case of the Studio 24C, you're always monitoring in mono. The signal is the same for both my left and right ear, even though the input signals are different. So if I go to the left and to the right, I hear it at the same level for both ears. Although, of course, during recording, the tracks are being recorded on separate channels, right? That's one thing. So I'd like to explain a few more things when it comes to using a dynamic microphone with the Studio 24C audio interface. So the way I've got it currently set up, this left microphone is a dynamic microphone. It's the Behringer XM8500. But before connecting it to the Studio 24C audio interface, I connected it first to my mixer, which is the Behringer Xenix 302 USB. And I did that primarily because I want the output to be line level, which is a stronger signal as compared to just using the dynamic microphone directly. So what you're hearing right now is the dynamic microphone through the mixer, and then the output of the mixer is the one which I've got plugged in to the Studio 24C audio interface. So what would happen, just so we can compare, if I just plugged it in directly? So I'll do that right now. What I'll do is I'll lower the gain of input number 1, which is where I've got my dynamic microphone connected, all the way to 0 while I move my cables around. So now, what you're hearing right now is me speaking into the the Behringer 85 XM 8500 dynamic microphone, and for this audio level, my gain knob is turned all the way up to maximum. So let me enable my other camera here just to show that here I've got it turned up all the way up, and you might have noticed a difference in the audio level, right? You can even see it here in the waveform. It's much lower now compared to what was there before. So to get kind of decent signal level, I have to speak closer to the microphone, or maybe speak a bit louder so that the audio is near to where it was before. But uh, this just highlights that there's a difference, right? Of course, the output of the dynamic mic is much lower compared to line level, and so you have to compensate for that by boosting the gain. But in this case, even at the maximum level, it's only up to this point, right? This amount of volume. Of course, dynamic mics are perfect if you're singing loudly, and so if you've got a louder input, then maybe this is just right. But in my case, I find that at a normal speaking voice, even with the gain at the maximum, the audio level is not where I want to be, right? So again, to make a comparison, I'll go back to my settings before, where instead of connecting the microphone directly into the Studio 24C, I will connect it first through my mixer using the preamp that it has, and then its output will be line level, which is a much stronger signal compared to just putting it directly. So let me do that now. I'll go back to my prior setup. There. So in this case, I'm now back to my connection setup initially, where I've got my dynamic microphone going through a mixer before connecting the out of the mix into the audio interface. This has some other benefits aside from just the boost in the signal. You are also able to kind of uh, craft or fine tune your signal before it goes into your recording. As with most mixers, you have some control in terms of your lows and highs, which you can modify. I'm modifying it now, boosting the lows, lowering the lows, and then the highs. You can increase the highs, lower the highs, and you can then have kind of fine tune your noise, your voice before it gets recorded. Okay, and with like any other mixer, you have your additional gain knobs and volume level knobs, and you can even have another input going into the mixer before you send it to your audio interface. So it just gives you more options on top of getting a higher signal, which from what I see is it's better handled by the Studio 24C if it's at a higher level, in this case line level output. Okay, so that's one thing to consider if you intend to use your dynamic microphone with your Studio 24C. If you're using it to record a normal speaking voice, it might not be loud enough. So you can either speak louder, boost it in post processing later on, or just speak closer to the mic and then max out your gain. That should help compensate the reduction in the audio level signal. But in my case, what I chose to do is again to use a mixer first before I connect it to my Studio 24C audio interface. And here I'll be doing a quick demo on how to use the digital audio workstation software, which comes bundled with your Presonus Studio 24C audio interface. So this software is called the Studio One Artist Edition, and when you launch the software, this is what you'll see as kind of the initial screen. The very first thing you'll need to do is click on this setup option. You can either click here, or in the menu you can go to Studio One and then Options, and that will bring you to this same screen that we want to be in, the audio setup. And what you would want to verify is that you are using the right audio device, depending on which audio interface you've got connected. So you can see here that if you have multiple audio interfaces, a lot of them are supported. In the case of the Studio 24C, the option you'd like to choose would be the Studio USB. And then click on OK. The next thing would be to click on New Song, which you can do from here, or in the menu you can go to File, New Song. So either way, it will bring you to this window. We have several templates here, but what we'll be doing will be just the empty song. Click on OK, and now you have here your kind of work area. Next, you would want to add a track. So click on this plus sign, Add Track, or you can of course go to Track menu and then Add Track. Here we're going to name this track as Voice because that's what you've got connected right now in my audio interface. And then you can select the format, whether mono or stereo. Now, if you select on stereo, then in the input field, in this drop-down, you'll be presented with those inputs which you've defined as stereo. In this case, input left plus right. And click on OK. Now, the next thing would be to click on this button, which is not yet to really record yet. You're not going to start the recording. It's kind of like priming for recording, meaning that it's enabled for recording once you do click on this button to do the actual recording. So I'll click on record, and what this will do is it enables those levels, so you would see at least that your signal is live, right? And I see here that if I speak closer in my left microphone, the left channel is higher in volume, and on my right channel I've got my other microphone. So I do have a left-right signal there. Now when you're ready to start recording, here at the bottom you can click on record, and you would see now that you've got this waveform being produced and showing that you're actually doing your recording. Okay, so mic test left channel, mic test right channel, and you would see that the waveform would adjust accordingly. Now that's just for recording your audio inputs as they are connected to your audio interface. But one big advantage of the Studio 24C is that it supports a loopback feature, which means that on top of what you've got plugged in to the audio interface, you can also record what's playing on your computer. And let's do that now. First, you need to go to Song and then Song Setup, and then Audio I/O Setup, because by default, the only inputs you'll see there are just the input left right, or input left or input right if you're using the mono inputs. In this case, we want to add a stereo input, which we are going to name, in this case I'll call it loopback, just to show that it's the input for the loopback. And what would be your channels there? It will now be your virtual in number 1, and then virtual in number 2. Okay, so you have to make sure that those are selected, left right corresponding to the left right channels whenever you play something on your computer. So I'll click on OK. So now I can add another track which will capture that that loopback input. So I'll put in here, say, computer. And then the input would be now the loopback, which we have just defined. So I'll click on OK. Okay. Now I can also enable that for recording. And then when I go back to recording my signal, I would then have on the first track what is coming in through the microphone, left microphone, right microphone. But on top of that, I'll play something on my computer. In this case, I'm opening this Canon Easy Rock, kind of a version of the Canon Rock which I created and kind of modified. And then I'll play that right now. There, so you should be able to hear that. And it's also now being recorded, right? So on top of the voice, you also have the recording in the computer, which is recorded through the loopback track. So let me reduce the volume of that one and just kind of have it running in the background at a lower volume. There, so in this case, we've got it fully working where you're recording multiple input sources. We've got your vocals on the first track, both left and right channels. And then in your computer, you might have your backing track or -1 or karaoke file playing there, so you can either sing along to it or have it kind of a background music while you're doing your vocals. So let me stop that now and also stop the recording. There. So those are the main features that you would go through when you're doing your recording in Studio One. One thing worth mentioning is that there's kind of an annoying thing that I experienced when using Studio One. For a multiple monitor setup, I'm not sure if it's a conflict with the app versus Windows setting or say some other software I've got which handles dual monitors, but you would see from time to time that when you go into some options, and it's quite it's not predictable, but in some options, in some panels and screens, when you click on the drop down, it might not show here like it is right now. It's showing there where you expect it to be. Sometimes an extra panel or pop-up would appear not on this screen but in my other monitor. So it might not happen to everyone, but that's something I experienced, that from time to time there's kind of a glitch when it comes to where certain panels will appear if you have a multi-monitor setup. Okay, so I think that's all I can say about this software. It is quite fully featured. You can do a lot of stuff here in terms of recording, plus some other plugins which are also available as part of the package. And it would certainly be kind of comparable or at par with a lot of the other more popular DAW software that are out there. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for watching this video. This is a quick demo and walkthrough of the Studio One software, which comes with your purchase of the Presonus Studio 24C audio interface. Thanks for watching.